moving on to some of the most influential games for me as a kid. And the first PlayStation game that I ever got, I remember my older brother bringing the PlayStation 1 home. He had a memory card. He had one controller. I remember going, "You only got one controller? Were you crazy?" And he had this game, Final Fantasy VII. Of course, I think everybody knows what that game is now. There's not really much need to talk about it. But I had never played an RPG turn-based game. Like nowadays, there's all these different terms for it. They were just called RPGs when we were kids. And I never played any of the ones on the Super Nintendo. We bought action games on the Super Nintendo. We played Mega Man X. We played Super Mario. Like we didn't play those games mostly because we didn't know that they were good, and people didn't talk about them the way they talk about them now. I'm pretty sure I was talking to a friend saying that that genre was kind of looked down upon at that time. I didn't know that. I mean, you and I are going to be doing probably a multitude of series talking about this game. Was that your first PlayStation 1 game, or when did you pick up 7?
It was not my first game. I got it much later in the PlayStation's life, and this kind of goes back to part 1 of our other podcast. I got it, I was reading a PlayStation magazine, and it had stuff. It was a walkthrough guide of Final Fantasy VII, and I was like, this game looks really cool. The pictures were hyper stylized and all that stuff, and I was like, man, that looks really cool. I'll check it out the next time I go to get a game. Which I believe at the time it was like at a Kmart. I think it was at a Kmart that I picked it up, and it was the greatest hits. The green jewel case.
Oh shit!
And picked it up, and I was like, yeah, okay, this looks cool. It's $20 or something, like whatever it was back then.
Yeah, greatest hits were like cheap.
Yeah, they were super cheap, and so I picked it up. And the second that I put the game in, there's that opening cinematic scrolling over Midgar, and I was just enthralled. Final Fantasy VII is, to this date, my favorite game of all time. I think everything that we were talking about with those other games in part 1, it's the epitome of everything I love about video games. The story was amazing. The cinematics were amazing. The sound design was amazing. And keep in mind, we're talking about a game, we were joking about this earlier. A lot of the times, the character that you're looking at is like 4 pixels. Their hands look like toasters. Cloud has this big spiky hair. And I'm sitting there just wide-eyed, and just, this is the greatest game of all time. I'm interested to kind of hear what your guys' story is. Obviously, we've talked about how much we love Final Fantasy VII, but like for me, playing through the game, and I've played through it now multiple times. I've played through the remake and all of that stuff, but yeah, I'm interested to hear what you guys thought of it. You saying it's your first game. Imagine that being your first game, and it's the greatest game of all time.
Yeah, like I mean, like I'm still picturing little Amon, like wide-eyed, like playing Final Fantasy, because for us it was like just like for you, this life-changing experience. I think I might have been in 5th grade or maybe 4th grade. I don't remember. I'm really bad with like how old I was with memories, but playing this game, for all intents and purposes, this game was not meant for how old I was when we were playing it. And we had got it. Yeah. We didn't get the greatest hits one. We got the when it came out, so we're sitting there playing this game. We're like, how does this work? You take turns hitting each other? That's kind of cool. Like, oh, there's like magic. That's kind of cool. And my older brother, he was the one playing it first. And I don't know if he just like thought it was too hard or what, but for some reason my save file became, because, I had 3 other brothers and we're all having our own save file. But for some reason, and like I wasn't even ahead of anybody. I don't know where I was in comparison, but I know I wasn't furthest in the game. But my save file became the one that we played. And for some other dumb reason, they let you rename the characters. So we had renamed all the characters to like, oh, what do you think their names should be? Oh, this is Duke. Oh, this is Stephanie. Like, I don't know why we did that. Man, I remember sitting for hours upstairs in the bedroom, like playing that game, and like everybody huddled around, like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what should I do? And then we'd all sit there, all 4 of us, and be like, what about this? And then we'd try it, but you get to that iconic scene with, I mean, Game's been out long enough. Aerith gets killed,
Yeah.
And talk about like a gut punch to a kid. I'm like, wait, she's dead? We can't use a Phoenix Down on her? Like, I just played like all this, and like, she's dead? And so we get to the boss, Genova, and she just pounds us, like kills us 3 or 4 times. We can't beat her. I have to go to school the next day with the weight of the pixels of this poor woman being killed in front of me. Like, did I do something wrong? Do we need to start the game over? And then it wasn't until, I don't remember if somebody told us or we looked it up, because we came home the next day and still got beat by her. And we were like, oh man, what do we do? And then there was like an item we missed. I can't remember what it was called, like the Aqua Ring or something like that makes you like kind of immune to the damage that Genova does. But I mean, like the devastation of missing that item and then fucking dying, like, oh my God. Like, that whole story just like, I didn't understand it. I was too young to understand those themes. They were so heavy. I mean, we're gonna go into this much further later, but as far as being an iconic PlayStation 1 game, we have to talk about the Final Fantasy games that were on the system, because then I had to go play catch up. Not jumping into 8 or 9 yet in comparison to 7, because I just think that 7 and 8, the two are similar but very different. And did you like Final Fantasy 8? Was that one you liked?
So we kind of talked about this on the first part of this podcast, but so for me, my introduction to Final Fantasy 8 was actually on a demo disc.
Oh yeah, me too.
And so we played the invasion scene, where they're coming in on the boats and they run up the town and they're fighting on that. I played that probably 10 times doing that.
Hell yeah.
And then when I played the actual game itself, I played it with the background of playing 7 first, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I like, it just didn't resonate the same way with me. And again, it's like what you said, I was much too young to be playing those games to, those characters are meant to be 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, stuff like that. And I'm playing it as, I'm
11.
A teenager. Yeah. I'm 9 years old and I'm sitting there going like, wow, war. Yeah. War stinks, and it's like, I can't relate to the characters at all, but the cinematics were amazing. It's all of the good things. I obviously went back and played it as an adult and loved it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so my interpretation of 8 is, it was really good on the PlayStation, on the Pizza Hut demo disc.
Yeah. Well, and talking about graphical differences between 7 and 8 is really crazy, because it basically went from like you said earlier, toasters to like people. Yeah. And to us, they looked perfect. There's always all these like memes of like the zoom in of fucking Squall, and he's like, and Rhino is like, oh, you look perfect, and he looks like a fucking pixel mess. But to us, he did look perfect.
He was. It was real to me.
Wow, he's beautiful.
Yeah, I especially. Maybe it was the summons, I think, in that game. I just remember that being like, oh, wow. They were so fantastical, and it was just amazing. And again, we're talking about PlayStation 1 graphics here, but attached to those old TVs that we all had, in America, we didn't have SCART, we didn't have S-Video or any of that good stuff. We had red, white, and blue. Well, dang it, we had yellow, white, and red, plugging our composite cables in.
Fuck.
And it was like the developers knew you're not going to have this perfect setup. Now the big thing with Game of Thrones, where the final season was all in black and your TVs weren't calibrated right and all that stuff. Back then there was no calibration. So the fact that the graphics looked that good on the worst case scenario, technology, it's amazing to me.
Oh yeah. And we didn't even think about that kind of stuff. Well, I didn't. I'm sure there was kids my age thinking about that kind of stuff. Like, you got to get the component or something like that. I don't know. But you're talking about that Guardian Force system in 8. Like, summons in general, like, that had an effect on me. I freaking loved them in 7. Which, talking about 7, 8, and 9, if we're talking about just the Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation, it was, first of all, it was mind-boggling to me that, why are they numbered, but they're not related, but they kind of are?
Yeah.
But then, like, the summons would change in between the games sometimes. And that was like one of the major things that I always thought like was a part of a Final Fantasy game was those fucking summons, man. And I loved that stuff. And I don't know, it just was incredible. And
I think that whole magic system, you know, when you're designing a fantastical world like that, you're designing a magical system to go along with it. And it was just so believable, you know, like like you said, the summons felt like they were a part of the world, not something that was slapped on after the fact, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it was iconic for me. Just that whole system, you know, and like you said, maybe they didn't carry over exactly from 7, 8, and 9, but to me, that's what made Final Fantasy games were the summons, were the magic spells, and all of that stuff.
Freaking chocobos. Summons,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Summons, Moogles. That's what you needed. I don't care about no class system. You had to have those things, you know, in place. And then, okay, we're in Final Fantasy. You know, we're getting the heavy mythos. I mean, I probably wouldn't even know as much about different kind of myths and stuff like that if it wasn't for the Final Fantasy series. Man, we can't leave out fucking Triple Triad talking about Final Fantasy VIII without talking about Triple. I didn't even know nothing about no card games like that before. Wow.
See, to me, you know, I was
our Magic.
Yeah, exactly. I was a Magic the Gathering kid. I was a Pokemon card kid. You know, all of that stuff. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, great, here we go again. You know, one more time type of thing for me. But oh my gosh, I loved Triple Triad. It was the oh man. But like again, that's something that has nothing to do with that story. Yeah. But it was so iconic and so attached to that game. I think the Final Fantasy series does such a good job of making the world feel alive and real, and it doesn't revolve around you necessarily. You know, that game, you can choose to partake in it or not, but it's there, you know, and people are playing it.
Side quests, side minigames like that. Minigames is what the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Minigames were very iconic to RPGs, but we didn't know that, you know. We didn't know that minigames were what broke up the monotony of the grind. And grinding, I mean, people used to complain about, they still complain about this, but random encounters. But I always loved random encounters. You get to try your build out. Because that's how you experiment and learn about the game. There was no guides then to figure out how to build your characters correctly. You know, in 7, you got the materia system. In 8, you got the Guardian Force system that you have to, you know, do the draw system, which was really weird, where magic was a resource of numbers rather than magic bars that are replenished, you know. But like 7 and 8, like those were the two that I really latched on to, really enjoyed. I didn't play a lot of 9. That my older brother played a lot. I was talking to him about it the other day. And he was like, I don't really remember playing 9 that much. I was like, you loved 9. You loved 9 so much that when I went back to try to beat Final Fantasy VIII, you deleted my save file. I had to start over. And he was like, oh. Yeah. I'll hold that grudge till I'm dead. I knew he did that.
Well, you know, for the memory cards back then, they were what, 64 megabytes. So it's like you make 4 saves and it's maxed out.
We did it.
Yeah. Jeez, man. I was in the same boat. I didn't play or own 9, but I would, you know, go over to a friend's house and watch him play it. And it was kind of one of those things where that was the first instance of, you know, backseat gaming or doing a let's play or something like that. You go over and be like, okay, we're going to pick that save back up. And that was our save.
Yeah,
you know?
That one's ours. Yeah. Playing it as a group. I was just talking about the 7. This is our save that we're playing together. Like you said, this is a let's play. We didn't even know what let's plays were because they didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. We could have been millionaires.
It wasn't until you had said that, I don't remember when, years ago, that you had said that let's plays are like when we used to watch each other play games. And I was like, oh! And then I started watching let's plays.
Yeah. Well, you know, gosh dang it, what's that game called? Your brother played Persona. Persona 5 for me, and you know, we had that joke of I got to return my DVDs. I'm literally watching my friend play an RPG. You know, it's a life simulator, and he rented movies from the store, and he has to take them back. And I'm watching him play, and I'm like, wow, this game's amazing. You know, and it's like that's. I mean, to me, that's just as much fun as playing, as having your friend sitting next to you, and we enjoy it together.
Well, and then really getting to talk about it. I mean, this is really why we started this whole thing, because you and I sit there and talk about these games after we beat them, and we're kind of still down nostalgia run here. I mean, another game that talking about watching games, and we're still in the Final Fantasy. We gotta spiral into the one spin-off of Final Fantasy that I cherish more than any of them, and that's Final Fantasy Tactics. What an incredible game. And I know it, it was kind of inspired by the Tactics Ogre series, and I didn't know about those games, and I've gone back and played some of those. But man, that game, talk about adult themes that I was ready for after playing Final Fantasy VII. I was ready for some heavy themes, and that game carried them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like
I think that was the first time where, you talked about this a little earlier, where just the timing was perfect on that, where I was playing it at the same time my friends were. And so you would do the chapter, and then you would go to school the next day and you talk about it with your friends.
Man,
it was just amazing.
Oh my God. Being able to talk with your friends about a game and going to school and be like, hey, did you get further in that game? And most people wouldn't spoil games, but we didn't know about spoiling games. We didn't know about that. We just were respectful to each other, oh, I can't wait till you get to that. Tell me about that. Yeah. And then we go talk about something else like Pokemon cards or some stupid crap. But
yeah.
Like the graphics in Final Fantasy Tactics, what an amazing marriage of 3D and 2D, which now we've come back to. And I don't know what other games really did that kind of stuff. And Square was a different company then, Squaresoft. And so was always buying up all kinds of Squaresoft games, but not trying to get off of Tactics yet, mostly because talking about the different stylizations through the Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy VII, it was this jump from 2D to 3D, and they had all kinds of different models. I never really noticed that they had different models between cutscenes because I was a kid.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VIII had very realistic looking people, and then 9 was kind of like a callback, but then they had mastered the 3D by then. They had really nailed it down, but they kind of went back to kind of a more chibi looking style. They even had the Black Mage as a character, Vive, which is beloved by fans everywhere. And that story was really just like this big love story. And maybe that's why it didn't resonate with you and I. We were like, well, what about the fighting?
Yeah.
And like Tactics, I mean, I stared at those drawings of those characters forever, and just being able to build a character. I don't remember what you had said about this, but I'll see what you jog my memory here. What I did when I started a Tactics save, because you would play through it multiple times, would run to the thing, fire everybody in the party, and then hire my siblings, and be like, we're gonna fight together, and we would say it was Bryce's turn, be like, Bryce, it's your turn. What do you want me to do for your character? He'd move me over there, hit him in the face,
Yeah, I was like you said, fire the randomly generated characters that you get at the start. And right. I took, obviously from the Final Fantasy series, I took Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. And those were my 3 NPCs for the entire run. So you had Ramza and then those 3. Yeah, that was, there were so many mechanics in that game that I had no clue. There was a Brave and a Faith system that I paid no attention to. There was a Zodiac system where if your main character, their birth sign matches with their partners, the buffs are better. And if they match with the enemy, they do more damage. I didn't care about any of that stuff. I made myself. I made Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. And, if there were any animals, I called them the animals that we had at the house. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I totally missed out on playing with unique characters and the unique classes. Freaking Bryce will still fucking bring up how I had to make this choice between 2 characters on the map, and he was like, let me die and just rehire me. But he's still but now he's like, you didn't pick me. And I'm like, you told me not to. I don't know what I do. I'm like, why am I piloting this stupid fucking game, dude? You play.
Yeah. What all of that spawned because the game lets you change the name of the main characters. What a oh my gosh, dude, I loved it so much.
Dude, playing those games, RPGs, and they would let you rename the characters. We always renamed the characters because we always then would role play out our own stories within the story because we were just dumb kids. You know, it's been talked about in our friend group. What's the greatest game? I had never played these games, and they came to, and I was just buying up everything Final Fantasy at that point, you know, and so the renumbering of the Final Fantasy games kind of occurred on the PlayStation, where they re-released Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 5 and 6, and then Chrono Trigger. And these were games that were on the Super Nintendo that I hadn't played. We were doing emulators at that point and going back and trying to play some of these games. But then we bought the Final Fantasy Anthology, which had 5 and 6, which I really only played 5 on that one. I didn't really go and play 6 then. And then Chronicles, which had Final Fantasy 4, which we played the absolute piss out of. Me and Bryce playing that. Then there was Chrono Trigger. And Chrono Trigger, it's debated about being one of the best games ever made, even. Just not even realizing the people that were the part of that. Of course, everybody knows now. This is not new information. But, you know, we were being brought up on Dragon Ball Z as it was coming out. And then being like, why does that character look like Goku?
Yep. Yeah. You're exactly right. And you kind of alluded to it with the talking about the other Final Fantasy games. Even the idea of something being chibi style, you know, anime being really popular with Cartoon Network and Toonami and all of that stuff. It was starting to become mainstream and all of that. Yeah. So the side to that was Final Fantasy started to become popular and cool because it was emulating those styles. Obviously, like you said, we didn't know it was the same artist,
right?
But it was like, wait, yeah, that looks so cool. I want to try that because it looks like the thing that you're watching on TV when you get home from school. And you're exactly right. I don't think I would have ever played those other games had they not been in those, you know, anthologies and collections and stuff like that. And same as you, I kind of gravitated towards the first one in the series. Thought it was really cool. I, you know, enjoyed it. I didn't think it was anything mind-blowing. You know, I obviously liked 7 more than that. And so that was kind of my, you know, we put the barrier so high at the beginning and then you try to go back and it's like, oh, well, I like 7 more, you know? But yeah, I really enjoyed the anthology series. And like you said, I think Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross, I really enjoyed Cross as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those are some of the best RPGs of all time that kind of get pushed under the rug because, you know, like they were overshadowed by those other games.
Dude, going back and playing Chrono Cross, Chrono Trigger was really awesome because it had that like kind of mix your team attack system. Going back and playing Chrono Cross is so crazy because of their elemental system and how all those moves work in that game and how you could like recruit like fucking, I think it was like 60 freaking characters and like build them however you want. And good luck. And some of the characters could like evolve like Pokemon. Like it was just so that was a crazy game. And those, I mean, like just buying up stuff from SquareSoft. You know, I'm jumping around here quick because do we extend this to a third part 3?
That's the true Midwest goodbye. Is a second Midwest goodbye.
Yeah, this would be the second. Like we're now standing by the car. Like everything past this is gonna be extra. Okay, stick around for this extra bit because we're gonna talk about just like some games that are gonna lead us into talk. Well, obviously now we're gonna have to talk about PlayStation 2, and so this is just gonna be the end of this episode for now, and then we'll worry about what we're gonna talk about next.